In the session 2 of the series on Indian Constitution, I had discussed Article 12 to Article 35 of the Indian Constitution, which largely dwells on human rights. I thought I was not very specific in many cases, not clear cut, so I thought of making a small extra presentation from the notes I had very meticulously made so that you get a more crystal clear idea because there are certain things in this between Article 12 to 35 which are very, very relevant. Not just relevant, very, very important. Any citizen should know this. Before I go any further, somewhere in my lecture I said I was not able to tell exactly how many amendments to the Indian Constitution were made. The fact of the matter, as of today, 105 amendments have been made to the Indian Constitution. Now, someday I will have to go through every single of these amendments, which is another part of constitutional study. Now, there's some complaint from some quarters that my face is not seen. I'll just switch on the light so that you can see me better. Sorry for that. It's not, but very quickly, let's come to sort of things. Article 12 of the Constitution defines state. Please understand, judicial organs do not come very closely under the definition of state. The legislatures and local authorities come under state. So there's a definition of state, Article 12 of the Constitution, which is very clear cut. Now, next is the Article 13 of the Constitution. Supremacy of the Constitution over the state regarding rights conferred. Fantastic. The state cannot withdraw any right provided by the Constitution. The Constitution is supreme over the state regarding rights conferred. The state has to follow what is written in the Constitution. Article 14 of the Constitution. Equality of law. Prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of religion, caste, sex, or place of birth. What is that? Race. I did not write that word. I'm reading it now literally from my notes. I have written it, so I understand. I will write that Article 14 of the Indian Constitution. Equality of the law. Equality of law. Prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. I told you the article Constitution has 22 parts. Part 1, Part 2. Part 1 defines territory of India. Part 2 has many kinds of definition of who is a citizen of India. Once you are a citizen of India, you enjoy all these rights. Article 15 of the Constitution. Special provisions for women must be read along with Article 14. Please see what are the special provisions for women. That comes under the under a specific area called as women rights. We may not touch it. We will not touch it as of now. But Article 15 of the Constitution confers women with certain special rights. Article 16 of the Constitution, equality in opportunity in matters of public employment. Equality and opportunity in matters of public employment. Article 16 of the Constitution. Article 17 of the Constitution, abolition of untouchability. Article 18 of the Constitution, supremacy of the President of India in giving titles. I think in the earlier session I have said states do not have the power to give titles, nor should anyone accept titles, a citizen of India accept titles from some alien state or a non-alien state or outside state or maybe as some other bodies. And the President of India has got supremacy in giving titles. Article 18 of the Constitution. Most important thing for me is the Article 19 of the Constitution. Most important. I must emphasize this. Actually, I'm making the second session lecture just to emphasize on this Article 19 of the Constitution. All citizens shall have the right, freedom of speech and expression, assemble peacefully without arms, form associations and unions, move freely through the territory of India, to reside and settle in any part of India, practice any profession or carry any occupation, trade or business. This is the most important article within the Indian Constitution, one of the pillars on which the Constitution rests. It gives very clear-cut rights to the citizens of India, which every individual in this country should know. I will repeat again: freedom of speech and expression, assemble peacefully without arms, form associations and unions, move freely through the territory of India, to reside and settle in any part of India, practice any profession or carry out any occupation, trade or business. It's very important for me, the relation between business and the Constitution. The Constitution title constitutional provision right of an individual to practice any profession or carry out any occupation, trade or business. That means business is something that is a right of an individual to run within the framework of the Constitution. So this is very important. Article 20, no one can be compelled to be a witness against himself. That's slightly more complex judicial activity. We won't go into it. Article 21, protection of life and liberty cannot be deprived of life and personal property. Article 21, protection of life and liberty. Liberty cannot be deprived of life and personal property. Article 22, protection against arrest and detention. Article 22 of the Constitution gives you power. It tells the state, be careful when you detain people. Preventive detention, procedures under arrest, whatever it means. There are very clear procedures. Especially when a police catches a person, you must tell him very clearly, within a specific amount of time, what he is being detained for. Article 23 of the Constitution talks of human trafficking and forced labor. Human trafficking and forced labor. Article 24 of the Constitution talks of prevention of child labor. Article 25 of the Constitution, right to freedom of religious conscience, practice and propagation of religion. Very important this thing which touches religion. Article 25 of the Constitution. Right to freedom of religious conscience. You can choose your own religion. Practice and propagation of religion. You can also propagate your religion. Article 26 of the Constitution. Freedom to manage religious affairs. Create and maintain religious institutions, manage affairs and acquire property for such purposes. Article 27 of the Constitution. No person shall be forced to pay taxes to advance any religion. The state can't force someone to pay a religious tax to advance any religion. The state for itself cannot be partisan to any religion. Article 28. Certain education can provide religious education. Article 20. Certain education institutions can provide religious education. Certain education can provide education provided they are not funded by the state. In any state-funded institution, providing religious education has got its own limitations and prohibitions. But if you are a non-state funded institution, then you can provide religious education. Article 29 of the Constitution, protection of interest of minorities, the interests of minorities. Article 30 of the kind of right of minorities to establish and administer educational institutions, very important article. Article 30 of the Constitution. It gives right for minorities to establish and administer educational institutions. Article 31, don't worry about it. There's a confusion, but there's been on some special ordinance, it has been deleted. Article 32, right to move courts regarding rights. If any of your rights are violated, you can move courts. Article 23 of the 33 of the Constitution, not 23, 33. Modification, orientation of rights in special cases of armed forces and other related security institutions. Article 33 of the Constitution gives certain liberty and autonomy to certain institutions to frame certain kinds of limitations on the generic human rights are provided. Modification and orientation of rights. Modification and orientation of rights. Armed forces and the human rights have to be seen in a more in a way which is appropriate to within the organization. That's why all these people they've got their own act. They've got an Air Force Act, most probably they've got Army Act, they've got various acts. Though they come under the Constitution, but under that there are certain special provisions. But there can be a conflict between those provisions and the Constitution, which those acts made very carefully deliberate and derive. Article 34 of the Constitution, abrogation of rights during martial law. If martial law is passed, many of these rights, what we mentioned so far, gets abrogated. And this temporary abrogation, they've been withdrawn for a temporary period of time. Article 35 of the Constitution, Parliament shall have and legislature shall not have powers to make amendments. Very important. That means any amendments in this Constitution about human rights. Please understand that state legislatures can recommend, but they cannot put it as a law in black and white. It has only come to the Parliament. So I think I've done justice to this human rights component, Article 1235 of the Constitution. Our next part, most probably, is directive principles of state policy. Don't get afraid of this word directive principles of state policy. The Constitution is telling the government, the state, my dear friend, you cannot deviate from certain principles. They are directed from us. You have to abide by in all the activities that you carry out in the form of government or other state bodies. We'll come to that later, but thank you for as of now. Subhash, P.O. Subhash from Bangalore, India.